G'day and welcome back to my channel. Now as you can see, I've been moving ahead in leaps and bounds with the Bounty. And all the planking is now done on the port side. Yep, all that top layer. Now this video won't be about that final layer of planking because I've got something else to show you. But that will be next time, and I'll show you I've put in the stem, the keel's gone in, the stern post, and I've done, I've even done planking underneath here. But what I want to talk about is here, the aft, the transom, if you like. Now, I didn't have this on for the planking. I removed it completely because it was really going to get in my way. I knew I'd knock it off, I'd break it. Like with anything building kits, I don't add stuff that pokes out until the very end. So that wasn't there. It wasn't even part of the build. So I could then turn my Bounty over and I could do all the planking. And I knew that I wouldn't be banging on a little piece here and wrecking it. But I got to this part and I built it as per the kit. Here's a photo. But I really wasn't happy with that, and even one of the comments I had through my patrons was, it looks cartoonish, and it was. So, I did this. Doesn't that look a lot better? Huh? What do you think of that? Would you like to know how I managed to accomplish that? It isn't terribly difficult, it's a little bit fiddly, and through trial and error I found there was a method that made it a lot easier and less stressful. So, if you're interested in that, hang in there. Roll the music. Before I could work on the transom of the Bounty, I needed a way to hold it so that I could easily get to everything. So I came up with this method using a couple of pieces of string and a peg. Now, what I did was the peg goes in the hole there. And that won't come out, that'll hold. And the strings are set exactly at the right length so that when I place my Bounty down and then peg it to my cutting mat, or my cutting board I've got there, it fits perfectly and it holds in place and it won't go anywhere. I mean, as long as I'm not too rough with it. So that is my jig. Let's get on with the build. To make these little windows, because I'm doing it the hard way, I'm doing it after I did the other method, I've blacked out over the top of the previous acetate, which nicely fitted across all windows, and I had to actually cut the shapes out. So I had to measure them up and roughly make shapes to fit in there. Didn't have to be too worried they weren't perfect because obviously I'm going to frame. So the framing is going to hide a little bit of the edges, so I don't have to worry about that. Now for the framing, I've used actually the same piece of wood that was behind all of this, that came with the kit. So this was actually the piece of wood that had the hole cut in it for the windows. So I simply cut that into just over 1mm wide, which approximated the photos that I saw. Now, to do the inner parts, they needed to be a lot thinner, so I need to go to 0.5mm, and I had these planks, which were for the top layer, and these are 0.5mm thick. So that is just perfect for me to make a little strip, again, of about 1mm. And that's not that hard to do. Very gently running along. And there you go. So I now have that. I'll need to sand that because that will be a bit rough on the edge. So what I'm going to use is a nail file, which is handy because it's reasonably flat and I can place it down. And then I can just simply run my strip along it, which will give me a fairly good cleanup. It doesn't need much because that line that I cut with a knife should be pretty strong. There you go, that's not too bad. And I can always do a bit of a check just to see if anything needs catch. So I'm working in a very small little matchstick size piece here, so try and get as smooth as I can. With the cut I've made on this one, it's a lot harder to get this smooth. It's really trying to take the furries off is quite hard, but you can sort of get it done. Just drag it through. Shouldn't be too bad because using the knife I've cut a fairly straight edge. And anyhow, if they are wrong, they kind of show up. You're only making tiny little pieces. Alright, so we have the pieces we need. Now we've got to do the frame. Now you could use your rule and measure all this and do it that way. Yeah, you know, even using one of these sort of things, you could do all that. And it usually ends up wrong. It's rather strange that all that measuring, it often you've got to do it 2 or 3 times anyway. This is the nature of wood. Wood's very flexible, very malleable, things change, and what you think is precise measurement doesn't always work out. So what I found worked best was if I just simply lay the piece in its hole, so it's pushing into whatever gaps are there, and then using the side as a guide, score. That score is easy to find because I can just run my knife along until I find it. Down to go. Now I'm not going to do beveled edges because it's so tiny. Doing things like that is next to near impossible. So now my little piece should, if it's going to cooperate, it should friction fit in there. Unfortunately, it does slide out a bit, so yeah, there's a bit of kerfangling to do. Now, there's a good reason that I want that to friction fit, because all the other bits I'm going to put in, I want them hard up. So there's going to be quite a lot of tension in this when it all goes together. So making sure that that piece is as hard in that hole as possible, and it's really not, you know, any light bumps not going to knock the whole thing out of shape, is really important. Now I've gone all the way along in the bottom, and I've done that consistently with the way I do this method, because horizontal lines, to my eye, need to be perfect. Vertical lines are all going to wobble and go different angles. That's fine. So we can get away. We've got a little bit of leeway when we're trying to put things in with our verticals. But our horizontals need to match the planks and they need to be level. So that's why I will go end to end with my horizontal. All right, I'm going to glue that in there now. Bit of glue on the waist. A toothpick. And over the top. Oh no, Harry, you're making a big mess. No, this works, believe me. Over the top and rub it in. So remember, this thing's pretty well friction fit, so a little bit of PVA white wood glue and it is going to sit there perfectly. And afterwards I'll give this whole thing a sand which will remove any glue residue. So that's my first piece in. So I'll now continue using that same method to do the rest of the frame, the outside frame, and then we'll work on the inside. The whole reason of gluing those as you go and making them as friction fit as possible is to make this a strong, sturdy frame. So when we put in the cross pieces, they can actually push up hard as they need to, without the whole thing going out of shape. When I first did this, I just tried to dry fit the whole thing, which was quite a nightmare. And even just gluing the frame and then basically trying to dry fit all the middle pieces, again, too difficult. I've cottoned on that you put a piece, glue it. Put a piece, glue it, and that was the best way to make this arrangement without, you know, going insane because everything was coming loose. Now again, I would rest that across there, work out basically where it's got to lie, flip it on its side, and then I can measure off against the frame and just score. If I'm lucky, hopefully this little piece is going to fit. There we go. Just need to jiggle it a little bit. Ideally it should be half one side and half the other side, so it takes a a bit of a jiggle to get it there. Okay, and probably a little bit further up. So okay, so that's basically it. I've still got adjustment after I've glued, and that's the beauty of this, is that the PVA white wood glue is quite forgiving. And I'll now glue this again over the top, and yes, it will wobble a bit over the top. That's why I've eyeballed it first to go, well, okay. If I'd made it just a touch longer, I sanded off just a little bit too much when I adjusted the size before. So the idea is to have a flowing line that's going to run all the way through, so that the windows have the appearance of a continuous shape. So I think that works, and we can test that with something straight. And go, all right, well, from there, does that, yes it does, that's good. So that does go across from that one to that one. So I think I'm pretty right there. It might just need to come up, a tiniest bit here. Without messing it up. I've messed it up. As you can see, this method allows me quite a bit of finagling. Okay, have I got that directly across from there? Yes, I have. And that's midpoint there. I'm going to go with that because I can mess around with this for hours. But I should have a midpoint there and a midpoint there. And I have a nice line of flow. So it's just repeating the process now. I cut all the other pieces and I measure them and I cut them and I put them into place. And now I have my frames, horizontal lines all in, and they're setting. And I've tried to get them as tight as possible. I managed to get that bottom one really nice and tight, but my top one was just, it was perfect until I sanded a bit off it. So these are the tolerances, and this is the thing, even if you bother to measure it and try and put them in, the same sort of issues. So honestly, resting up and cutting is getting very, very close, and then you're only like a micro millimetre off with a little bit of a sand. Now, the hard ones are going this way. Now, ideally they should all be the same size, but it doesn't always work out that way, because here I've got from there to there, but this side it's just ever so slightly smaller. So they're going to get smaller as they go across. But in theory, they should be equal for any section. I've measured, cut and filed to shape 2 tiny little pieces, which hopefully won't drop on the floor this time. To say this is fiddly is an understatement. So there's one. So they just friction fit. And here is 2. Now, the trick here, of course, is to get them equal thirds. And parallel to the sides. Once you've got the first one, all the others have to line to it. So, it's not quite right, isn't it? That's looking about right, because that would be a line parallel to there, there'll be a line parallel to there. That's not bad, and we'll have a little bit of wriggle room as we glue anyway. So let's glue those two in before they move any further, and then I'll get on and I'll measure and put in the rest. Now, always check that that hasn't moved out of place. No, that's better. Sitting hard against it. It's just a matter of very fine tolerances and measuring and tiny bits of sanding until they fit perfectly. And if you're patient and take your time, they'll go in. The beauty is having this rig arrangement so that I'm working basically directly over and I can see what I'm doing and I can lean down into it and place the pieces. Okay, time for the last one. The last couple are the easiest because you can really push down hard and get them to friction fit. You know, because you're basically pushing against everything else. In fact, then it locks the whole frame in. And that's the beauty of getting this as tight as possible. It's less likely to fall out and fall to pieces if it's nice and tight anyway. So the glue is just really reinforcing. So last one, hold that all in place. Rest up hard against the frame and make my mark. I couldn't really push it too hard when I was doing the other ones because you knock everything over. And things do come loose and things do fall out and you do have to adjust, and it does drive you crazy. But by the time you're on your fifth window, you know exactly how to cope. In it goes. Look at that. I actually got it. I think I've got it. I'm not going to fiddle with it. I can at least glue that, and if I need to, I can adjust it a tiny little bit. It doesn't look too bad at all. Slightly out at the top. No, I'll probably bugger the thing now. Yep, that'll do. Good. And the firmness in it now that I can feel, it's holding everything in place. So I know my other little pieces won't wobble. The beauty is too, if I notice now anything's moved, I can adjust it. And I've already gone through and tweaked a few, just that tiniest bit. But look, I've got it. It has some imperfections, but they are so tiny, I probably see them. Those of you with eagle eyes will see them. What you can do now is, now that it's all nice and firm, and things are not going to, as soon as you put the glue on, wobble away, is we can go and add some extra glue, because this stuff will disappear, and anyway it's fairly easy to lightly sand off. So there we are. That should keep that frame together. So we just leave that now, at least for a few hours to set. Then if you're very careful with the sandpaper and you very gently rub, you'll take a few high spots off if there's any glue lumps, but there basically won't be. You can also come back and clean up, because like in here I've noticed there's a little stray little thing there. So, you know, you can do a bit. Oh, that one's a bit loose too. So there we are. Some of them haven't set as well as I thought they would have. So we'll just give you a bit more glue. But the beauty of the stiff frame, keeping it tight, is things just they won't fall out. You know, if you try to measure this up, cut all your pieces, glue it together off the model, put it on, well, good luck. You might get away with a perfectly rectangular one where everything's straight, 90-degree angles, but with something with this, with all the wonky angles, honestly, it's probably easier to do it the way I've done it, even though it takes some time. But at least you'll get a result that holds together, fits in place, and it's purpose fit. So there you go. That's how I made the windows on the stern of the Bounty. There you have it. I've placed in the little frilly bits, the little final pieces there of decoration. I won't glue them in now because we've got a lot more woodwork to do, and then get this up onto the keel stand before I start adding things like that. I'd hate to bump and wreck those. Plus they need to be adjusted perfectly to fit in with some scrolls, which have got to go up there. But I think you can see where this is heading and how this window look is infinitely better to what they wanted you to do in the kit. So I think this is a quite a useful improvement, and I think it adds so much more detail and richness to this model. So if you're building this kit, you might like to have a go at the same sort of thing that I've tried here. See if you can improve your windows and give them, you know, a much more realistic look than those sort of cartoonish cut-out lines that they supplied in the kit. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed doing this upgrade. It took a long time. It's not something you can do in a weekend. It took a few weeks' work, and I had to take my time and I had to learn the method. Hopefully, with what I've shown you, you might be able to do it a lot faster than I did, because I had a lot of trial and error until I'd figured out that glue all the bits in as you go sort of trick. Anyhow, that's it for now. Look, if you enjoy my videos, please like, comment, subscribe, do all those sort of things. And if you'd really like to help me out on this channel so that I can give you more of these sort of videos, then think about subscribing to my Patreon page, where from as little as $1 a month, you get to see these videos early and advert free. And it really helps me out so I can produce content for my YouTube channel. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. So it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.